We'll be going over IRS Form 14039, Identity Theft Affidavit. So this is an affidavit for victims of identity theft. If you've already filed this form, you do not need to file it again. Refiling a form that's already been filed will only slow the IRS process down. Probably the most important part of this is that most cases, taxpayers do not need to complete identity theft affidavit to the IRS unless they believe that they've been a victim of tax-related identity theft. And even then, only if you've not received a letter from the IRS indicating that you might have been a victim of identity theft. So if you believe you've been a victim of tax-related identity theft, and you haven't received notification from the IRS, then you should probably complete this form. This form is 2 pages, so it's fairly straightforward. Here are some signs that might indicate whether or not you've been a victim of identity theft, according to the IRS website. So if you can't e-file your tax return because there's a duplicate tax return already filed using your Social Security number, that might be an indication. It also might be an indication of a transposed Social Security number, so double check your Social Security number just to make sure that your entry is accurate. If you can't e-file because one of your dependents' Social Security numbers or tax ID numbers has already been used, then that might be a sign of identity theft. If you receive a tax transcript in the mail that you did not request, if you receive a notice from a tax preparation company confirming an online account was created in your name, even though you did not create an account, if you receive a notice from your tax preparation software company that someone logged into your account and it wasn't you, if you receive an IRS notice stating that you owe additional tax or that your tax refund was offset due to a balance due, or if you've had collection actions taken against you for a year where you didn't earn any income, that might be a sign of identity theft. More importantly, that might be a sign that someone filed a fraudulent tax return using your information, and we'll get to that in Section B. If the IRS sends you a notice stating that you received wages or income from an employer for whom you did not work, like a false W-2 or a falsely generated 1099. And finally, if you were assigned an employer identification number and you never applied for one, these are all signs that someone might have used some of your personal information without your knowledge or consent or permission, and that they might be doing things like committing tax fraud. So this is the form that you would file in the case that one of those indicators happens to you. This is pretty straightforward. In Section A, you'll check the appropriate box. Either you're submitting this for yourself, if you're submitting it in response to an IRS letter or a notice, then you'll provide the number of that notice or the IRS letter on this line here. And then you'll check box 1 in Section B, and then there are special mailing and faxing instructions. If you're submitting it on behalf of a child or a dependent relative, then you'll check this box and complete sections A through F. And if you're submitting it on behalf of another person, either alive or deceased, other than your dependent, then you would check this box and complete sections A through F. So real quick, we'll go through this. Section B talks about how you might have been impacted. Section C contains the contact information and the name of the victim. Section D is the tax account information. Section E is a penalty of perjury statement and signature. And finally, Section F is information about the representative, conservator, guardian, or parent. So now that we went through Section A, let's talk about Section B. What happened to you? How are you impacted? And this is required if you're reporting any misuse of your taxpayer ID number or your social security number. So either you know that someone used your information because either you or a dependent was fraudulently claimed as a dependent on someone else's taxes, or your information was used for employment tax fraud, or maybe neither of those things. Maybe you simply know that your information was used to file a tax return in some other manner. Or you can check two, which means you don't know whether or not someone used your information, but you believe you're a victim of identity theft. So in that case, you would write a brief narrative of what happened. And it really doesn't even have to be brief. You can write as much as you want and put additional information on the back of the form. You should be complete as complete as possible. So that will help anyone that's assigned to investigate this, and it might provide information on similar incidents that have happened to other taxpayers so that the IRS can catch those people and hold them accountable. In Section C, you're going to enter the information of the identity theft victim. So if you're the victim, then this is going to be your information. But if it was your dependent, or if it's a deceased taxpayer or someone else, make sure you're entering that person's information. So last name, first name, middle initial, social security number, current mailing address, or if they passed away, the last known address. The address used on their most recent tax return, if it's different from the current address, followed by a telephone number with an area code and preferred times to call, and then preferred language, so English, Spanish, or you can check the other block and fill in an appropriate language. In Section D, you'll input as much tax account information as you can. So about your last tax return file, what returns were impacted. So if you didn't have a filing requirement, you can check that box. You put your name that you used on your last filed tax return, and then the last year that you filed, and then which tax years you believe might have been impacted. So here's a short little note. We're not completely finished with the form, but there's a short note saying to submit the completed form to either the mailing address or the fax number on the back of this form, but not both. So in Section E is the signature. This is your sworn signature under the penalty of perjury that all information is true, correct, complete, and made in good faith. And you'll sign the penalty of perjury statement, and then go to Section F. If you're submitting this on someone else's behalf, if you're submitting this form on your behalf, you do not need to complete Section F, only if you're as a representative. So check box 1 if the taxpayer is deceased and you're the surviving spouse. That means you don't even need to attach anything, even the death certificate, because IRS will probably already have that. If the taxpayer is deceased and you're a court-appointed or certified personal representative, then you need to attach a copy of the appointment letter. If the taxpayer is deceased and a court-appointed representative has not been named, then you would attach a copy of the death certificate and indicate your relationship to the decedent. You'll probably be familiar with this as you might be going through some other tax-related paperwork regarding the decedent's estate. And this looks very familiar. In item 4, the taxpayer is unable to complete this form and I'm the appointed conservator, where I've been authorized to act on behalf of the taxpayer per IRS Form 2848. So if you have if there is a 2848 on file, you'll need to attach a copy of your authorization. And if you have what's known as a CAF number, which is a centralized authorization file number, then you would enter it. This is a 9-digit number that's mainly for people that routinely do this. So tax attorneys, CPAs, sometimes fiduciaries probably would not have this form on file. They would use a different one. But legal guardians, people that have the ability to use power of attorney powers to act on their client's behalf. Or number 5, the person is your dependent, whether it's a minor child or a dependent relative, and then you would indicate your relationship, either as a parent or a legal guardian, power of attorney. If you're an actual fiduciary, you would need to include probably a copy of your IRS Form 56, which is the fiduciary relationship form, or some other relationship. And if that's the case, then you'll simply attach the appropriate form to this, complete this information, your name, last name, first name, middle initial, mailing address, and telephone number. So you'll need to either fax this or mail it. Do not do both. Make sure that the photocopies you're submitting are clear and readable, and submit the original tax return to the IRS location where you normally file your tax return. Do not use the information in this form to file your tax return. So if you're submitting it by mail, then you would mail this form. If you checked box 2 in section A, you'll return the form to the address in the notice or letter. If you checked box 1 or 2 in section B and you're not able to file your return electronically, then you'll attach this to the back of the paper tax return and submit it to the IRS location where you normally file. And then for everyone else, you would mail the form to Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, Fresno, California, zip code 93888-0025. If you're submitting this by fax, you should include a confidential cover sheet. If you are submitting this in response to a letter from the IRS and it provides a fax number, send it there. If there's no fax number shown, then follow the mailing instructions on the notice or letter. For everyone else that did not receive a notice, then you can fax it to 855-807-5720. That completes our overview of IRS Form 14039, the Identity Theft Affidavit. We've written a step-by-step guide on our website. You can reach that article by going to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in Form 14039 in the search bar, and this article should appear. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please post them in the comment section or send me an email. Thank you very much and have a great day.